The call that wasn't ours. The signal began as a whisper in the noise. Not a burst. Not a pulse. Not even a waveform. It was a pattern, buried deep inside the constant rain of neutrinos passing through the listening lattice orbiting Neptune. Dr. Elia Navarro didn't notice it at first. No one did. The deep array was designed to sift impossible amounts of data, filtering cosmic radiation, mapping stellar cores, tracking exotic particle storms from collapsing stars. It was not built to find messages. Yet something had shaped the neutrino flow into a repeating structure. Not random, not natural, deliberate. The pattern repeated every 91 minutes. Then again, and again, and again. Elia watched it loop across her display, unease tightening in her chest. "Tell me I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing," she muttered. Across the lab, systems analyst June Park leaned over, squinting at the projection. "That's not noise," he said quietly. "Noise doesn't repeat like that." Elia zoomed in. Nested within the fluctuations were layers, mathematical harmonics arranged in descending complexity. The deeper they probed, the more intricate the structure became. Like a language, or a lock. "Run origin trace," she ordered. June did, and frowned. "That can't be right." "Say it anyway." "It's not electromagnetic." Elia blinked. "Everything's electromagnetic." "Not this." He rotated the projection. The source vector extended far beyond known signal transmission methods. "This is embedded inside neutrino flux," June said. "Someone encoded it into particle flow." Elia stared. Neutrinos passed through stars like mist, through planets, through bodies. They barely interacted with anything. "Which meant, nothing can block it," she whispered. June nodded. "And nothing accidental could make it." Within hours, the discovery reached Earth. Within 12, it reached the Galactic Concord. And within 24, humanity received its first official directive regarding the signal. "Do not respond." The Concord's message arrived with unusual urgency. Not curiosity, not diplomacy, fear. At the emergency session, the Concord envoy, a crystalline being known as Speaker Terrell, shimmered with visible agitation. "This signal predates your species," Terrell stated. "How much older?" asked Admiral Hargrove. The chamber lights dimmed as the envoy projected translated data. "Millions of years. Before humanity had discovered fire. Before Earth's continents had settled into their modern forms. Before most Concord species had evolved beyond microbial life. This signal is not a greeting," Terrell continued. "It is not communication. It is not meant for discourse." "Then what is it?" Elia asked. Terrell hesitated. "A summons." Silence filled the chamber. The Concord had known about the signal. They had monitored it for centuries. It had appeared before, briefly, and vanished again, always from the same region. A region deliberately excluded from star maps. Designated, non-navigable. Admiral Hargrove leaned forward. "And you never investigated?" "We learned long ago," Terrell said carefully, "that some doors remain closed for a reason." Elia frowned. "You're saying this signal is dangerous?" "I am saying," the envoy replied, "that responding to it risks awakening something we do not understand." Later, in the private briefing, the truth became clearer. Fragments of the signal had been translated. Not fully, but enough. The repeating structures suggested system failures. Containment breakdown. Defense collapse. Something had been maintained. Something was failing. And whoever had sent the signal was losing. To the Concord, this confirmed their worst fear. To humanity, it sounded like a distress call. "They're asking for help," June said during the Human Council session. "They're not asking us," countered General Okoye. "They're asking someone capable of solving their problem." Elia spoke quietly. "Or someone capable of surviving it." Debate spread across Earth, across Luna, across Mars, across the belt. Military command warned of traps. Scientists urged investigation. Diplomats argued caution. Then, the linguists presented their analysis. The signal structure wasn't hierarchical. It wasn't commanding. It wasn't even directed. It was open, like a flare, or a lighthouse, broadcast without expectation of reply. Which made it worse. Because it meant the senders weren't expecting salvation. They were hoping someone might hear. Anyone. The Concord issued a second directive. Stronger. Final. Do not respond. Speaker Terrell addressed humanity directly. The species who created this signal were known to us only through remnants, the envoy said. They called themselves wardens. Wardens of what? Admiral Hargrove asked. Terrell's facets dimmed. We do not know. But you're afraid to find out. Yes. Humanity wasn't. Not entirely. Because humans understood something the Concord did not. Systems failed. Civilizations fell. Structures broke. And when they did, someone had to answer the call. The final push came from an unexpected source. Dr. Amara Sethi, civilian linguist. She stood before the council and displayed a reconstructed fragment, a repeating sequence buried deep in the signal. Simplified, stripped of its complexity, translated, 3 ideas, over and over. Containment, failure, time. It isn't calling for warriors, she said. It isn't calling for rulers. She looked around the chamber. It's calling for survivors. The room fell silent, because humanity knew survival. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, extinction-level events, and themselves. Admiral Hargrove made the decision quietly, without ceremony, without announcement. A single encrypted instruction sent to the deep array. June saw it arrive, looked at Elia. This violates Concord law, he said. Elia nodded. Yeah. June hesitated, then entered the command. The neutrino pattern shifted. Subtly, gently. A response. Not loud, not aggressive. Just acknowledgement. For the first time in millions of years, the signal was answered. And far beyond the mapped edge of the galaxy, something noticed. The graveyard beyond the map. The Concord's response was immediate. Humanity's was faster. By the time the formal reprimand reached Earth, the expedition fleet was already underway. 3 vessels. Not warships. Not colony ships. Something in between. The Dauntless, the Kestrel, and the Sagan had been retrofitted for endurance rather than confrontation. Layered systems, redundant power cores, independent command modules. Messy by Concord standards. Practical by human ones. If something went wrong, they wouldn't fail all at once. The journey took them past the edge of the mapped galaxy, beyond trade lanes, beyond observation buoys, beyond the silent borders where even automated Concord probes refused to drift. Navigation became uncertain. Stars shifted subtly out of predicted alignment. Gravitational fields behaved strangely, not violently, but wrong, as if something had once reshaped the region and left the distortion behind. Captain Mara Ellison of the Dauntless watched the readings with growing unease. This whole sector feels abandoned, she said. Navigator Rio Tanaka shook his head. Not abandoned, he corrected, deliberately avoided. As they approached the signal's origin, something else became clear. The signal was growing stronger. Not because they were closer, because it was escalating, repeating faster, urgency rising. Then they saw it, the star, or rather, what was left of it. A cold, dim ember hung in the void, its light barely more than a fading ghost. It hadn't gone supernova. It hadn't collapsed into a black hole. It had simply stopped, as though its energy had been drained with surgical precision. Orbiting the dead star were fragments. Millions of them. At first glance, it resembled a shattered planet. But the debris was too regular, too precise. Artificial, June said from the Sagan's science deck. No one argued. The fleet advanced cautiously, and the scale became apparent. This wasn't debris. It was architecture. Massive curved plates. Frameworks larger than cities. Sections of structural lattice still glowing faintly with dormant power. They weren't random. They had once been connected, forming something vast, something hollow. Elia, Captain Ellison said quietly, "Tell me we're not looking at what I think we are." Elia didn't answer immediately. She was staring at the reconstruction forming on her display. Piece by piece, the fragments aligned, until the shape emerged. A sphere, the size of small moon. A shell. Not a habitat. Not a station. a containment structure. Silence filled the bridge, because they all understood the implication. Something had been inside. The signal led them through a breach. Not an explosion, not an impact, a collapse, as though the structure had failed from within. Inside, the fleet found darkness, not empty space, ruins. Cities clung to the inner surface, broken, half erased by time. Massive support pylons stretched into the void, many sheared off. Defensive platforms drifted silently, some still powered. And deeper still, movement. Automated systems. Ancient, still functioning, still fighting. The first contact wasn't hostile. It was defensive. A cluster of drone constructs detected the human ships and moved to intercept. Not to attack, to scan, to assess, to determine. Friend or breach. The Dauntless held position. No weapons powered. No shields raised. Just presence. The drones hesitated, then withdrew. Containment logic, June said. They're not guarding territory. They're guarding boundaries. Elia felt a chill. Guarding against what? The answer lay deeper. The fleet followed the signal's strongest echo toward the sphere's core. And there, they found the wardens, or what remained of them. Not bodies, not ships, machines, organic machine hybrids fused into the infrastructure itself. They hadn't abandoned the prison. They had become part of it, maintaining, monitoring, enduring, for millions of years. But the systems were failing. Energy grids were fractured. Containment nodes flickered erratically. Sections of the inner structure were gone, not destroyed, consumed, as though erased from reality itself. Elias studied the damage patterns. They weren't explosive. They weren't thermal. They weren't mechanical. They were absence, pure absence. And then she understood. This wasn't a war, she whispered. The wardens hadn't been invaded. They had been worn down, slowly, inevitably, their perfect systems lasting for ages, until time itself broke them. And when perfection failed, there was no one left to repair it. The signal wasn't a call for rescue. It was a request for reinforcement, for replacements, for someone to continue the watch. Captain Ellison turned to the fleet channel. They didn't fail because they were weak, she said. They failed because they ran out of time. As if in response, the signal changed. For the first time, it acknowledged them. Deep within the broken sphere, something shifted. Not machinery, not structure. Something else. Something vast. Something patient. And for the first time since their arrival, the ancient defensive systems began to activate again. Not against the humans, but toward the dark. Toward the places where reality had been eaten away. June stared at the sensor readings. They're not reacting to us, he said slowly. They're reacting to something that noticed we're here. Inside the silent prison, something had been waiting. And now, it was awake. The thing that waited. At first, nothing happened. The ancient defense platforms reoriented, their slow movements stirring clouds of dust that had floated undisturbed for millennia. Energy flickered through cracked conduits. Broken towers hummed faintly as dormant systems awakened. But the darkness remained, silent, watching. Then the sensors began to fail. Not all at once. One by one, the Kestrel lost a mapping array. The Sagan reported corrupted telemetry. The Dauntless experienced a brief lapse in internal network synchronization, a flicker lasting less than a second. But it was enough. Something's interfering, June said, his voice tight over comms. Jamming? Captain Ellison asked. No. He hesitated. It's simplifying. Elia frowned. Explain. June brought up a live systems feed, where once there had been rich, layered data, now there was less. Not missing. Reduced. Compressed. As though complexity itself was being stripped away. Across the prison's interior, the ancient systems reacted violently. Defense constructs activated. Containment pylons surged with power. Barriers reformed around zones of absence, regions where the structure no longer existed. And from those regions, the darkness began to move. It wasn't visible. Not directly. It didn't glow. It didn't cast shadow. It revealed itself only by what vanished when it passed. A drone dissolved mid-flight. A section of wall lost texture, then depth, then existence. Reality folded inward and disappeared. "What is that?" Captain Ellison whispered. No one answered, because nothing in human experience resembled it. Elia turned her focus to the ancient systems. "They've seen this before," she said. "Look at the response patterns. They're not attacking, they're containing." June ran predictive models and froze. "It's not targeting us," he said. "Then what?" Ellison asked. June swallowed. "Anything structured." The realization spread slowly. The entity wasn't alive, not in any biological sense. It had no heat signature, no mass, no electromagnetic presence. It was a phenomenon, a predatory force that consumed complexity, systems, patterns, order. And the more advanced the system, the more it had to consume. The Wardens hadn't been destroyed in battle. They had been erased. Over time, their perfect networks had made them visible, predictable, edible. The entity moved toward the fleet, and the Concorde's warnings suddenly made sense. "Brace for systems collapse," Ellison ordered. But it didn't happen. The Dauntless shuddered, then stabilized. The Kestrel's redundant processors split load across mismatched architectures. The Sagan's chaotic routing protocols rerouted around lost points before they fully formed. Nothing failed cleanly, because nothing was clean. Human systems were layered with inconsistencies, manual overrides, improvised patches, half-forgotten redundancies, messy solutions to old problems. The entity brushed against the fleet and hesitated. June stared at the readings. "It's not consuming us," he said. "Why not?" Elia asked. He shook his head. "It can't map us." Where Warden systems were elegant, human systems were fragmented. Where the Wardens had design perfection, humans had evolved resilience. The entity reached into the Sagan, and instead of collapse, it found noise, contradiction, disorder, subsystems that disagreed with each other. It withdrew. For the first time, the ancient defense grid shifted its focus, not toward humanity, but with them. The realization hit Elia like a shockwave. "It doesn't feed on energy," she said. "It feeds on order." Captain Ellison understood immediately, and were too disorganized to eat. The entity moved again, toward a Warden containment node. It dissolved in seconds. Perfect structure reduced to nothing. June's hands moved rapidly across the console. "We can't destroy it," he said, "but we can starve it." "How?" Ellison demanded. Elia answered, "By giving it something it can't simplify." Human engineers began transmitting new protocols into the failing grid. Not elegant solutions, but layered ones. Fail-safes designed to fail. Systems designed to disagree. Redundancy built on incompatibility. Where the Wardens had built precision, humans built persistence. The ancient network resisted at first, then adapted. Containment zones stabilized. Barriers reformed. Not perfect, but functional. The entity recoiled, not destroyed, but slowed, confused. For the first time in millions of years, it encountered something that did not collapse into simplicity. Humanity had become what the Wardens never anticipated. Not stronger, not smarter, but harder to erase. Captain Ellison looked out across the broken interior of the prison. "We're not jailers," she said quietly. "We're maintenance." Elia nodded. "And this place has needed us for a very long time." Behind them, the entity waited, still patient, still hungry, but no longer unchallenged. The answer that changed the galaxy. The entity could not be destroyed. That truth settled over the fleet slowly, like gravity. Every simulation ended the same way. Every projection confirmed it. The phenomenon inside the prison was not a creature. It was not a machine. It was not even an intelligence in the way humanity understood intelligence. It was erosion, a force that stripped away structure the way time stripped away mountains. You didn't kill erosion. You endured it. Captain Ellison stood on the dauntless command deck as the fleet worked. Containment zones were stabilizing. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but they were holding. Human engineers had begun integrating their systems into the ancient Warden infrastructure. not replacing, reinforcing, adding layers where perfection had once ruled. Flexible energy routing, non-uniform containment grids, subsystems intentionally misaligned. The Wardens had built a prison designed never to fail. Humanity was building one designed to survive failure. Elia watched the results unfold across her display. Every time the entity brushed against the new containment fields, it faltered, not stopped, but slowed, forced to navigate inconsistency, forced to interpret contradictions. It doesn't know what to simplify, June said. And when it can't simplify, Elia replied, it can't consume. Across the prison interior, the ancient defense platforms had ceased their frantic responses. Instead, they mirrored human patterns. Adaptive, layered, imperfect. The Concord watched from afar. They had not withdrawn entirely, but they would not enter. Not yet. Their transmissions were cautious, concerned, confused. You are modifying Warden systems, Speaker Terrell said through the comm relay. Yes, Ellison replied. You risk destabilizing containment further. Ellison paused. Containment was already failing. Silence followed, because the Concord could see it too. For the first time in millions of years, the collapse had slowed. Humanity didn't seal the breaches. They buffered them, created overlapping zones, fallbacks for fallbacks, barriers that assumed eventual breakdown and prepared for it. Where the Wardens had trusted eternity, humans trusted maintenance. Deep within the prison, the entity tested the new boundaries. It pressed against layered containment, against contradictory energy fields, against structures that didn't align. And for the first time, it stopped advancing. Not defeated, but held. June leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched into every movement. It's working, he said. Elia nodded. For now. Now is enough, Captain Ellison replied. The ancient Warden systems responded, not with alarms, not with defense activation, but with communication. For the first time since humanity's arrival, the signal changed again. It wasn't the original summons. It was something else, a message buried deep within the infrastructure itself, stored, waiting. Elia began translating. The structure was older than the signal, older than the prison, perhaps even older than the Wardens themselves. It wasn't meant to be sent. It was meant to be found. The translation resolved slowly, fragment by fragment. Containment is not perfection. Containment is endurance. Containment requires those who survive failure. Elia felt her throat tighten. They knew, she said softly. Knew what? June asked. That they wouldn't last forever. The Wardens had never expected salvation. They had expected succession, someone else to continue the watch. They had built the prison to outlast themselves, but not eternity. Nothing lasts forever. The Concord's final transmission came hours later. Speaker Terrell appeared once more, their crystalline form dimmed in what might have been humility. You have succeeded where we would not have tried, the envoy said. Ellison shook her head. We didn't succeed. She gestured toward the containment grid. We just showed up. Beyond the fleet, the prison glowed faintly with renewed stability. Not whole, never whole again, but alive, maintained. Human systems now ran alongside ancient ones. Messy code intertwined with flawless architecture. Improvised redundancies reinforcing elegant design. Not a perfect solution, but a lasting one. The Concord amended the region's designation. No longer forbidden, now protected. Humanity was offered command authority, guardianship, stewardship. Ellison declined. We're not in charge, she said. We're responsible. Deep inside the prison, the entity remained. Patient, enduring, but contained. Humanity established a permanent presence. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as responders. Maintenance crews replaced watch fleets. Engineers replaced soldiers. Redundancy replaced rigidity. The signal that had once echoed across the stars went silent, its purpose fulfilled. And across the galaxy, a new understanding spread. Strength was not perfection. Power was not permanence. Survival belonged to those who adapted. The signal had never been meant for humanity. It had called to something older, more advanced, more ordered. But when no one else answered, humanity did. And because they did, the prison endured. The entity remained contained, and the galaxy survived. The signal wasn't meant for humans, but they answered anyway.